Burgess and Bolton's weekly wrap-up.
Oh, it's my video. There I am. Hello, Ben.
Hi, Jeremy. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday to you. Are you well?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm excited about the conference next week.
Yes. More of that to come. So welcome, everybody, to this week's edition of Burgess and Bolton's weekly wrap-up, where we look at everything to do with the London market, technology, change, and innovation. This week, we are previewing the London Market Claims Conference, which is taking place on Tuesday. Very excited to get back to real-world event. And yeah, so almost sold out. So delighted so many people are taking up the opportunity. But first, let's do the news, Ben. So I think you've got some news to kick things off. And this is on InsurTech, Greenberg on InsurTech, I think.
Yes. This is a theme that I think we've been picking up, so it just shows how much we're ahead of the curve. Greenberg's probably seen the show and made this statement. What he's really saying is that technology is, subject to a lot of hype in insurance, and he's saying it doesn't change the fundamentals of how the business works, and that's really about humans and the art, if you like, of underwriting and risk assessment and risk taking. He's not saying that it's not important. He's not saying that it's not going to help the insurance experience to get better if it works, which we'll come on to. But he is putting it in its place, I think, in the context of the business of insurance, and he should know.
Yeah, and I think I agree with you. It's the thing that I think annoys us both around this is the hype and froth around it. But I do think as a place, as you were just saying, and I do think it's an enabler of innovation and change. If we just think back to the way that organizations did successfully work from home and they did leverage that technology, although you would say it's a little bit clunky, I think that has shifted the dial a bit in terms of how people do think about their roles and what they do, and the amount of paper and still manual processes involved in some of these transactions. But it isn't the be all and the end all. And I think we've talked about it before. It's the intersection of people and technology to enable something greater than what you had before. That's kind of the key thing.
Yes, and I suppose that Greenberg is also saying that in the end, what gives you value in the business is the people and the talent and the ability to spot opportunities and commercial, whether they be commercial opportunities, customer experience opportunities, not this sort of kind of neutrality, if you like, of technology. And technology is kind of in some ways inert, you might say. It does something, but it only does something when a person starts to utilize it. And I think the thing that you've just talked about is really, for me, and I think for us, is really that technology is not an end in itself, and sometimes gets talked about it as if it is. And I think that brings a laziness into the industry, which Greenberg's alluding to, where you almost forget that it's still about thinking and the intellectual process of making the industry better.
Yeah.
Not just expecting a computer will do it all, you know. And I think that's where money is wasted as well, and technology doesn't have impact because people kind of expect that. So I think we've got to be wary of the hype that is around a lot of technology.
Yeah. Having said that, we then come on to news item number 2, which is don't blink or you'll blink.
So this is interesting because while he's playing and seemingly downplaying technology at the same time, Chubb is launching itself quite what it probably thinks is quite a cool way, we'll discuss in a minute, into the world of almost kind of this millennial type of product. What in the world is Blink? Easy, effortless insurance for everyone. We won't bombard you with questions or ask you to jump through hoops. In fact, it takes just minutes to sign up. So there's one product out on this, and it is a simplified personal lines product at the moment. But obviously, to me, it signifies the fusion, if you like, of things that we've spoken about: the customer experience, the need for simplicity, and the digitization of the process. And it brings and the marketing, you know, that it's kind of cool, supposedly, which we'll decide on that in a second. But you know, but it's a holistic. It's a kind of holistic product here, isn't it? We're not talking about what you often see in insurance is hey, here's a really great new product, and it looks like it's come out of the 1970s in terms of how it's marketed, or here's an amazing new product which has got great marketing, but when you look at it, it doesn't do anything that's any different from any other policy. Yeah. So they've clearly thought this through, and that's good.
It is good. And I think it does bring us on to the name. And I think what in the world is Blink? I'm not entirely sure I'm up to speed, but I think you've got the website, Ben, that gives you a bit of detail about what is covered inside.
Yeah, so this is quite funny because we've also unearthed a terrible typo here, which we'll come on to. So what they give you is these kind of scenarios about what's covered, and they are scenarios because they still say at the bottom these coverage examples are hypothetical claim scenarios. So this is a cyber protection product, and it's talking about your massive digital footprint in the world and how, you know, everybody needs this kind of cover, which is perhaps you do, perhaps you don't. I'll give you some of the scenarios in a minute. They're a bit odd. So some things that are covered are deceptive transfer fraud. When you receive a fraudulent invoice from someone pretending to be a person or entity you do business with, misleading you into transferring cash. Cyber breach, when your reputation is hurt because private personal information or false information is published about you. So if you buy this, Jeremy, the stuff I'm going to say about you next week, you'll be getting a payout for, so that's all right.
Oh, yeah, good.
Cyber bullying, when a co-worker repeatedly harasses you online by spreading rumors about you which your boss sees, resulting in you getting fired. You suffer from mental anguish as a result of the persistent harassment and losing your job. And it goes on, but then there's one here which we were a bit confused with at the beginning, which is electronic data restoration. Someone hacks your car and deletes all of your data, making it unusable. And I think we've concluded that it's not someone hacks your car, it's someone hacks your computer.
Yeah. If somebody hacks your car, then they just drive off with it.
I mean, you know, cars are pretty electronic these days. I presume they could be hacked and it could be unusable, but I don't think they mean that. I think that means they're going to bring out the motor policy next, but they've just cut and pasted.
Yeah.
From somewhere. And then there's a really odd one. It says, someone hacks your World of Warcraft account and steals your gaming assets. That's very specific.
Yeah.
But anyway, look, at the end of all this, someone at Chubb is thinking about this, and you know, they're kind of putting it out there as an interesting product. I think it's quite good, actually. I mean, it gets you talking about it. It feels more tangible as a product, then
Yeah, definitely. And
it doesn't make me cringe, which most insurance products do.
Yeah, that is true. And I also think there is this thing about your digital assets. I know it sounds a bit whimsical to talk about World of Warcraft, but you do spend real money, like proper pounds, on your kit and outfit and weapons and all that kind of thing. I know my boy does in our favorite, which is Fortnite. So I can imagine if you do lose all that and all the challenges and everything else, it can be really annoying.
Well, there have been quite a few stories, and I've experienced it myself, but not at any high level, of kids taking their parents' credit cards and then just spending thousands of pounds. And I presume that sort of thing might well be covered. Although I think it does exclude family members' actions. Right.
Okay.
So anyway.
Interesting. We'll have to, as it says, don't blink or you'll miss it. We were thinking, what in the world is Blink? It's a band, isn't it? Blink 182.
Yeah. I think it's the idea that things are moving blink and you missed it. Blink and it says things are moving fast. Sign up below and we'll let you know when it's time to check back. This kind of language is a little bit down with the kids, isn't it? But is it really how kids talk?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't think they do, but what do I know?
Yeah, what do we know? Good, excellent. Thanks for that, Ben. Right, we've also got some stuff around broker stress. This is quite interesting, actually. From Ecclesiastical.
Yep. It's good, actually, this, because we've been talking with quite a few of our clients and among ourselves about some of the research that we've been doing. And I've spoken, obviously, with the brokers themselves, too. And there's been a lot of discussion about the pressures on brokers in particular through the pandemic. And Ecclesiastical, and I've spoken to them about this piece of research, so hopefully we can talk a bit more about it next week at the conference, is really interesting. I'm always a little suspicious of surveys of people's illnesses or conditions, or morals, because they're hard. They're very hard things to research, and you're into definitional language. But what I will say is that we have experienced people who have said, in a lot of our surveys asking about other things, service quality and things like that, you can tell through the almost reading between the lines of what people are saying that they are under a lot of pressure and frustration and quite downhearted, I'd say, quite low. And I think this is a piece of research that is talking about exactly that, that 68% having experienced a mental health issue is a very high number. Even if you halved it, you'd say it's a lot.
Yeah.
And it's gone up since the last survey. So it's also that women have been more stressed, which has also been a long-standing discussion, that women are more disadvantaged through a pandemic because of their kind of responsibilities and childcare and things like that, and expectations. So that is another interesting angle. And actually, I would say that looking at gender differences now is really important, because we're seeing it in all sorts of areas of our surveys, that gender differences are not just about mental health issues, but about all sorts of things. I mean, women have quite a different view of what they want and what they expect, and how they experience this industry from the men. And in London, of course, it's very male dominated. So as more women as we get more of a gender balance, I think that's going to be really be a big change for the industry, I think, for the good, perhaps.
Yeah, I think so as well. I mean, I think it's just good to talk about this stuff and then try to unpick what lies beneath it, as you said, because mental health covers a whole range of issues. And you're right. Next week we'll probably try and just unpick that a bit and just talk about it and see what can be done to improve it. But it's definitely one to keep an eye on, especially as we're going back to a hybrid way of working. So we're not going to go back to 5 days a week, and people being able to pick up on the thing about face to face for me is that you can pick up on the vibe of someone.
Yeah.
You know, and you can tell whether they're a bit down or something is not right underneath the surface, and it's a lot more difficult to pick that up on a camera, and it's also a lot easier to hide that emotion.
Yes, and I also have a theory that is probably not just my theory, but it's a theory that empathy, you know, the word empathy, the ability, as you've talked about, to understand other people. And I think one of the things that's put great stresses on people through a pandemic is that it's a sort of loneliness creeps into life if you're just on computers, which doesn't bother some people. I mean, I've spoken to people who say, oh, I love that. I don't want to meet other people. But most people on a continuum do. And I think you get something that is, you know, almost like the equivalent of endorphins when, you know, like exercise. But when you've met people and you've had that feedback, you know, it's a different kind of stress, but I think it's a really positive stress to meet people and see them, because, and not meeting them all the time is why you're thrown back on just your own personal mental resources, and you've lost context, I think, a lot of the time. So I can understand it.
I can.
Plus also, of course, all the functional stuff that we've seen, which is the breakdown of systems and processes and services and workflows and things. You know, that makes it, you know, even more frustrating. And I also, just to finish it off, wonder whether the old initial dialogue that we had about everybody's fine, everybody's done really well and transitioned fantastically, and was just a sort of a bit of an illusion. So that if you felt down and everybody else felt like everybody else was okay, again, you'd probably make you feel more down. It would exacerbate the issue for you. So I think it's confusing, I suspect, for a lot of people when, you know, before COVID, we'd all took it for granted. You know, it was just so the hybrid situation now is quite challenging, I think.
It is indeed, and that is a good segue into our little mini preview of London Market Claim. So as I said at the top of the show, it's a real world event taking place next Tuesday. And only 4 days away. So really looking forward to it. It's what we thought we'd do is just play a couple of clips based on the agenda, and then we can talk through some of these themes. The reason I say it's a good segue is because one of the major themes is how we're going to, or the implications of the hybrid way of working for claims and delivering a consistent claim service if that's possible. But I was just going to highlight a couple of things. That Matthew Moore is going to be kicking the day off. I think that's going to be a really interesting kind of perspective from a business leader of a global enterprise, just talking about some of the issues and challenges around London and within his organization, and the implications for claims on that. We're going to hear a couple of clips. So first one from Claire Constable, and she's taking part in a session that's looking at creating a customer-led, claim-centric organizational culture. And that's something we talked about, you know, in 2018, 2019. I think that the dynamics of where we are now post-pandemic have stressed that again. And then finally, we're going to hear from Lee Elliston, who we measured on the last couple of weeks, but I've got a clip from him talking about perhaps a change in mindset that's needed. But let's kick things off by listening to Claire. She's talking about returning to the office and what it means for her team. So here we go.
So to me, what COVID has done is accelerated what has been tried in the past anyway. To the mindset point, I think it has shifted the whole working from home mindset. I'd heard many times before this happened, if you're working from home, you're not working, Claire, are you really? And I'm a big proponent for what I would call beforehand the working from home mummies. And shouldn't say that anymore. It's for parents as well as mummies, but that was what it was. And they were some of the hardest working people in both my teams before and this team. And so with this mindset shift, I'm really, really glad, and I hope it continues, that it is understood people are being productive just as much, even more so in cases, at home as they are if they're in the office. What we need to do as within our company, and we already started those conversations, is define what is productive in the office and what is productive more at home. Some of your kind of more project focused, when you need the very linear energy, you can do at home. And also, I don't think it's just about the venue either. I think it's also about the times. We say we're a global, and certainly my company, my claims team is a global claims team. Even if they're sitting in London or in their work at home offices, they are dealing with clients all over the world. So why not use it as an opportunity to flex into different times as well as different venues? So that's where we are with our mindset, and we are having lots of discussions about what's very important to the purpose of the office. And when I say the purpose of the office, I also mean the purpose of coming into the city. So we can go and sit in any of our co-insurers' offices or the brokers' offices to have client meetings, but I still am a massive proponent of face-to-face, but we can discuss that later. And you asked me, what am I focusing on prioritizing in the claims service at the moment?
Yeah.
So it's really, to me, it's still all about the people. And for this instance, my people, my team, but looking at it from the customer perspective. So everyone's had to embrace massive uncertainty. So one of the biggest things that I've done is helped my team with courses and tools and everything to embrace change themselves, because they've had to embrace it personally and professionally, and kind of had to hold the hands of some of our clients through it. And clients quite rightly still demanded speed and demanded transparency and demanded communication, whatever forum it was in. So we've really, really focused on that at the moment. And then, like everyone else, we are also looking at, I think we're going to discuss it in a moment, where we are in the market modernisation journey, Blueprint 2, and we can discuss that in a moment, and also what's our internal journey. We know there are certain different types of claims, and different types of claims can have different solutions to make them the cheapest way of processing it and the fastest way of processing it, but still then focusing on understanding the data and really what the client needs at the end of the day, which robots haven't worked out empathy yet. So we still do empathy. We still do all of that experience and insights we have. That's how we can keep benefiting the customer and paying their claims quickly as.
So a good clip there from Claire, and I'm sure we're expanding on those topics and themes. But it kind of links in quite nicely with what we talked about with the Greenberg thing at the top of the show, where she's talking about prioritizing people and having that customer-centric mindset. And clearly she's given it some thought that there is an opportunity to rethink around the customer, just her thinking about clients in different parts of the world and time zones and things like that. So I think it's really interesting how these ideas are evolving and really how they'll play out, I suppose.
Yes, and I think the words that comes to me is flexibility, and of course you have to define some of these things in large organizations to make sure there are policies and procedures, but this is a big change if we're talking about big companies becoming, if you like, more like agencies, where people are more able to flex what they do. So I think that's it's a challenge for a lot of organizations and for the people themselves, because they've been used to working in quite rigid structures.
Yeah, it's definitely one for next week. And when she was saying big proponent of face-to-face. I've been thinking about this as well, and I think it's those conversations that you have off agenda that have been really missing, I think, and I think that would be one of the purposes of the office, to bring people back together. Yes, have a meeting, have an agenda, fine, but it's those subsequent small chats, water cooler moments, as they used to be called, where you do find those sparks of innovation and drives new ideas and, perhaps move things on. So, yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, a lot is duty, isn't it? You realise a lot of what we talk is kind of dutiful talk, where we're supposed to talk in a certain way about certain things, but actually the interesting stuff is the, as you say, the kind of off-piste stuff, really, I think.
Yeah, definitely. So let's bring in the next clip. So this is Lee Elliston. So I've just basically asked him whether he feels there's been a mind shift in the London market as a whole, and whether people are ready to embrace change and transformational change rather than modernization. So let's pick up the conversation with Lee.
I wouldn't say that there's been a mindset shift. I think traditionally the market has been great at trying to articulate why we can't do things and why things will never work, and it's disappointing, because the best thing about the marketplace is the people. The people make the marketplace. They give Lloyd's and the Lloyd's market and the London market its USP, because it's the knowledge, the experience, the level of collaboration, the relationships that we've got, and how that all turns into how we deliver products and respond to products and deliver service and do it in quite a bespoke way, in some quite complex and challenging scenarios. But whilst those people give the market its USP, they're people that don't really have a mindset around trying things that are new, shaping things differently, and allowing things to almost develop and deliver when they're not quite ready. And we don't live in a perfect world. So why should we live in this perfect world of delivering change or transformation when everything's got to line up and be 10 out of 10 and ready for every single user that might access it on day one? So I think there needs to be a big mindset shift in the market. I don't think that's just a claims issue. I think it's just a market issue. Do I think that comes from the skills and capabilities that we've got in our marketplace? Absolutely. I say that because I don't believe that we've got diverse enough skills. I think we need to be swelling the market with skills and mindsets that come from different backgrounds and industries. And I think if you put that together with the strength of the insurance knowledge and skill set that we've got, then you take the mindset and the capability level of our people in the market to a different place. But we've got to want to attract different skills, and we've got to want to attract different people. And that comes from organisations wanting to do things differently.
Again, a good clip there from Lee, just talking about whether he feels there's been a mindset shift or not. Clearly, he doesn't, and he's very frustrated in that piece, I think. And in the full interview, I think he goes on to say that a few years ago, a lot of work was done to initiate change. And if you look to where we are now compared to 4 years ago, not a lot has moved forward. So I think that is going to be a really important topic of conversation at next week's conference. It's just how do we move this forward without going in this cycle of it being, no, we can't do that because of the 10% or 5% of the business that wouldn't work in that new, in inverted commas, process. And I think he also talks about later on rather than modernize, perhaps we need to really think about transformation, because what we always seem to fall back on as an industry is to modernize existing processes. So we take a process, a manual process, put a little bit of electronic, facade around it and call it digitized, when really I think he talks about hitting the reset button at one point in terms of transformational change. So I think I think it'd just be good to have an honest conversation about why this stuff doesn't happen at the pace that it needs to, I feel. And it probably comes down to some of the stuff that we talk about in terms of culture and leadership and appetite for change.
I think, we'll talk about this more next week, but I think one of the points that we will raise and discuss is really fundamental, and I think it's going to be in Matthew's talk, I hope it is, which is about actually claims need to be sold. It needs to be a selling point for the organisation. And I think that's what's often missing, is it's seen as an administrative process. It's still seen as the back office. It's still seen as an efficiency play. If only we had the MI, if only we had the systems, if only we had the data. All of those things are absolutely fine. But I just think that claims has to be much more part of the commercial proposition. Otherwise, it's always a bit of a backwater for people and talent and for the industry. And it's this thing that I've talked about, which is, why do we still call it claims? Because that defines it as something that you might not get. But actually, it should be a promise, and it is a promise. We know we always say that, but it's in any product, you should get it. You should get it unless it's something really exceptional. You should get the payout or the restoration of whatever it is you need restored after an event. So it's very important we get to that as part of the proposition, because otherwise, when you talk about purpose, you say, well, these big organizations talk about all these lovely woolly concepts of purpose, but isn't the main purpose to help businesses out in times of trouble, or to help individuals out in times of trouble? That's what insurance is there for. So but let's sell that, don't make it worthy. Don't make it kind of just say, yeah, we are a business and we want to sell that. We want to sell that idea to people. But I think the industry is reticent about that. Brokers ask insurers or claims teams to be commercial, which means, could you please pay out if there's a claim?
Yeah.
Could you be flexible? All those things. But I think brokers too sort of slightly stifle the opportunity for insurers to really sell great service, and that should be discussed. I think Hiscox for a while did sell great service to direct, through its advertising direct, and there was no problem, right? Brokers were happy with that. I think we should get away from the idea with some kind of one-size-fits-all industry. Some people are going to be great and offer fantastically good claim service, and some people are going to offer, technically good, standard, but you pay different. You pay your money, you make your choice, right?
Yeah.
But stop pretending that we're all as good as each other.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's fascinating when you start to kind of unpick it, and I think we should definitely raise that next week and see if we can just challenge the audience to see if they can just decide what, as you put it, whether they want to be a service-led, customer-centric, claims-focused organization, or whether they just want to be always looking at the small print and the legals to see whether everything is really covered.
Yes. I saw something yesterday, which I see quite a lot and I always bring up, which is so-and-so from a big claims team talking about how they resolved a fraud and chased these people down. And I thought, right, if I'm selling that product of claims, I don't want to be talking about chasing people down for fraud, because that blunts my sales message. Because it draws attention to the dark and actually probably quite it's an exceptional part of the industry. We don't need to talk about fraud the whole time, but it implies that everybody's potentially a fraud, really, and it's a very old-fashioned view. I would rather say, look, yeah, okay, fraud happens, and there can be the odd interesting kind of crime watch story about it if it's really, really, but don't use it as a sort of tar everybody with the same brush or say that, because I think it's used as a quasi thing of saying we might not pay out.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. Well, I can't wait to be at the conference next week. Obviously, see you, Ben. We've got our little double act going on.
Yeah.
Don't worry, it'll be better than this.
Better than this. Yeah.
Yeah, the production values will be much higher.
Yeah, it's like Strictly, isn't it? It's like, once it goes out on the road, it's fantastic. Yeah, it's the theatre version of it. It'll be really be good.
What I might bring is my box of sound effects. So I've got an explosion.
Yeah, actually, maybe something's come up for next week.
Oh no!
Oh my God!
We love them. Very good. Right. Let's move things on. So, Ben, what are you doing this weekend? Apart from preparing for Tuesday, of course. Anything planned?
I'm going to play golf.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, because the weather's so nice. It's going to be warm. It's getting warm. It is warm. It's tropical, tropical, record-breaking temperatures this weekend.
It is hot in here, I've noticed. But I've had to close the window because of building outside. So, it's still grey and a bit rainy here. But I don't know what we're doing. I think we're actually getting ready for the conference, to be honest with you.
Yes.
Loading the van, etc., etc. It's lots of parts to this thing, as you say.
Yeah. It's going to be good. It's going to be really good. I'm very excited about it.
Good, excellent. Right, thanks everybody for tuning in. If you're coming along on Tuesday, can't wait to see you. And on the flip side, next week, Ben, we'll try and gather some outcomes, shall we, from the event?
Yeah. Why not?
Summary. Yeah.
And then we won't speak about claims for about a year.
Yeah, we'll off that.
We'll do something else.
Yeah. Right. Thanks, everyone. See you next week.
Bye.